We could double up with them. And doors for exiting and entering.
Yeah, I got it. I'm John Raphling. I'm a lawyer. I recognize quite a few of you. I don't recognize everybody. My office is here in Venice.
Who are you again?
I'm John Raphling.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer. I primarily do criminal defense. I also do civil rights. Criminal defense law is civil rights law, and it's human rights law. My civil practice generally involves suing the police when they commit misconduct. I also do some First Amendment cases. And a large percentage of my criminal cases are essentially First Amendment cases. I've worked with various groups, Occupy LA, Los Angeles Community Action Network, Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, various environmental groups whose activists and organizers are being prosecuted for organizing and for being activists and for standing up to the police. So I'm sort of the legal battle on that end. I guess I was asked to come in here and talk a little bit, do a little know your rights talk so we understand what our rights are. And just trying to get a little bit of a feel of how to tailor it. Different groups have certain pressing concerns, and I guess in keeping with the theme of the surveillance, I'm going to talk about your right to surveil and to not be surveilled, since those were questions that seem to be coming up. So the question that was being asked, so can we videotape? So I'll start there in terms of our right to surveil. One of the organizations that I work a lot with, the Los Angeles Community Action Network, has a program called the Community Watch. And what they do, they're down in the Skid Row neighborhood, downtown Los Angeles, is they go out in teams, usually 4 people, and they patrol their home, their neighborhood, with a video camera, with clipboards, with still cameras, and with their eyes and ears. And they walk around and they look out for what's going on. And when they see the police conducting a stop or doing some sort of activity, they go over there, they keep a safe distance away, and they witness and they observe, and they videotape. When things are clear, they may ask questions, and in this way, they monitor what the police are doing. So the question is that legal? LAPD doesn't like it. Law enforcement generally doesn't like it. But depending on how it's done, it's legal. We have the right to be a witness, in other words, to observe and to document what police are doing. We don't have the right to record private conversations, but when they're out there in the public doing whatever they're doing, we have the right to watch, we have the right to videotape, we have the right to ask questions. Where we get into trouble is that LAPD doesn't like that, and so they accuse us of interfering. And so when we're exercising these rights, it's really important to be careful about how you do it. For example, if you're an LAPD officer and you're getting arrested, you can't be up like this. It's not going to work. You will get arrested. You have to keep a safe distance. You can't interfere. Now, what is a safe distance? There's not a specific number of feet. It just depends on the situation. For LAPD, a safe distance will be in the next county. But, you know, you got to use your judgment. You got to be aware of the situation. How aggressive are these police here if I step back 5 feet from where I was, will I still be able to witness, and will I be out of their face, or are they gonna keep coming at me? Often, we have lots of situations where they post someone up to block the view of the camera. And the cameraman walks over a few feet, they move over and block the view of the camera. So there's a variety of things that they do to avoid surveillance, to avoid being watched, sign of a guilty conscience. But as long as you're a safe distance away, whatever that means, then you're not interfering in some way. You have the right to observe and the right to videotape.
If they're asked, if you are at a safe distance and you have not interfered with an interrogation or whatever procedure that they're doing, upon them finishing whatever they do, if they approach you and try to take your camera, are they allowed to do that? Or not take it, or to ask you to delete whatever you recorded, are they allowed to do that?
Good question, because they often do that. No. Simple answer. No, they can't order you to delete something. Well, they can order you to delete something. They can't legally order you to delete something. They can't legally order you to turn it over. Now, you want to be a little bit careful, because if there's evidence of a crime, you don't want to be withholding evidence or getting into that sort of trouble. But you know, what I would tell them is, you give me your contact information, I'll make a copy of it and I'll get it to you. But I'm not giving it to you right now, because this is my only copy. We don't trust them not to mishandle it. I've had too many cases where people have been witnesses to police misconduct, have given statements, and those statements end up in the ground file. So, no, don't give them the video. You don't even have to talk to them, other than once you give me your contact information, or I'll send this to your watch commander after I've had a chance to make a copy of it. That would be also a good approach when they come at you with, give me the tape or delete it.
And if they don't want to comply with your...
Well, look, you know what, they have the guns.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's a said truth. They have the guns, we have to find other weapons. If they're coming at you and they're going to take it, you know, then it's a question, you know, are we gonna fight over this? Or what? And I'm just saying, if they're going to use force to take it, they're probably going to succeed, because they've got guns and they've got more of them than you. Are they violating the law? Yes. Hopefully you got friends around who are documenting. That's why Los Angeles, that's why LA Can goes out with groups of 4, right? And maybe if something's going off, they're using their cell phones to contact home base and say, hey, something's going on, and they're getting more people out. So, as we know from history, collective action is usually more effective and safer than, you know, the lone cowboy out there doing stuff. So it's good if you are videotaping. If you're doing it systematically, certainly you want to have a group with you. If you're walking down the street and you see stuff, it's also not a bad idea to engage with other people to get them, you know, so they see what's going on too.
Like Peggy, she mentioned about a year and a half ago when there was a training here, some ways to kind of provide more physical evidence that you're complying. She said if an officer asks you to step back 4 feet, you put your camera down, videotape yourself stepping back 4 feet, and then go back up again, so that there's actual video evidence of complying with requests, whatever they might be. And that one trick she thought was kind of cute and clever, if you have the gumption to pull it together. She goes, I'm trying to videotape you doing such a wonderful job that, you know, it'll be the kind of thing you'll be proud of in the future, so that example inspector, watch commander, that we can just show them what an exemplary officer you really are. And she just kind of put a little mind game coming on that. She said time for it.
Sure. I gotta say, I don't recommend playing games with them. One, because, like I said, they got the guns, and you don't know how they're gonna react to it. And often the goal of the videotaping is to get them to be the exemplary officer, because when they're being watched, they act a little better. And that's something that we certainly found downtown, is they chill out a little bit when they're on camera. Not always, and it's amazing how shameless they sometimes are when the cameras are on. But I don't recommend that. also, just from the perspective of the lawyer who's got to clean this stuff up in the end, is it's really helpful not to say anything when you're filming. It's a real temptation. Look at those motherfuckers, what they're doing, right? I mean, it's a real temptation because we're human and we're reacting emotionally, and that's why we're out there. It's because we care about this stuff. But part of winning the battle is winning the battle within ourselves and staying in control and not saying anything. I can't tell you how many really good video of police misconduct gets ruined, particularly the protest stuff. Man, people run their mouth so much that it just hurts. So then when we get in court, it's like, wow, our people really look bad because they're saying all kinds of ignorant things, and it looks, and it'll get used against us. So on the technique side, yeah, I really like the idea of documenting that you're moving backward, that you're complying with reasonable orders. Generally, I like the silent and observe. Sometimes you got to say, hey, stop that, right? Sometimes your role, has to be more active. As always, it's a judgment call, but it is generally, particularly from the perspective of when it has to come into court and we got to sell it to a jury. The more poker-faced and silent we are, that helps.
Is there a constitutional right?
Your First Amendment protects your right to document and observe. There are cases, the way the law is defined, right? The First Amendment says what it says. You have the right to free expression. But then there are cases in the courts that define what that actually means. And there are cases that say you got the right to document, the right to observe. And that's part of your First Amendment right. That's a generalization, and everything that I'm saying here is a generalization. And there are the specific circumstances. The law is going to vary depending on the facts. So I'm not addressing anyone's specific situation, but being general, generally you have that right to document and observe. There may be situations where you don't, where something is going on where you would not have that right. But as a general rule, if something's happening out in the public, you can, as long as you're not interfering. Yes, sir.
What can you do after you start taking?
Okay, well, let me get to that in a moment, okay? Because that's a little different area, and the quick answer is, I don't know.
You won't know.
But we'll talk about that. So that's our right to, okay, well, I guess then the next question is, what do you do, right? You've observed some misconduct, you got it on video. What do you do with it?
Send it to you or Carol.
There you go. Okay. Well, one is, there is a certain number of lawyers who are involved in enforcing the law around our civil rights, and one of the things that a lot of organizers around know is who of us to contact, and then we take action. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Peggy Kennedy. Some years back, she and Calvin Moss videotaped some police misconduct. Police misconduct when a guy was getting arrested. And at that time, I was working in the public defender's office, and we knew, and she knew, that this guy who was getting arrested was going to get sent to court, and he was going to get a public defender. He was a homeless guy. And so she called me and got me the video, and I figured out who had the case. I ended up taking the case myself. And we were able to use that case to get him out of jail, and then to use the video to put some pressure on the police department. So one thing is get in touch with the lawyers, get in touch with the public defender's office, Los Angeles County Public Defenders. They're easy to find. They're in every courthouse. If something happens here in Venice, it's going to the LAX courthouse. Otherwise, get in touch with me and I'll direct you, or some of the organizers, who kind of know who to turn to. But one, because that's going to help the person who's been abused save themselves in court. Filing complaints, going to the media, these are all things, again, depending on how bad the misconduct is. Certainly groups spend a lot of time going to the Inspector General, which has opened to us in the Police Commission to have public hearings about various things and raising these issues. So again, the more we develop a culture of challenging them, the more that there's going to be a response and more momentum we can build up for reform.
Incident reports, did you try to
Sure,
talk to people
sure.
if they're not arrested?
Yeah, no, I mean, by incident reports, you mean filing a complaint. Yeah, filing complaints are good. I would say, particularly if the person has been arrested, to hang on and find out what's going on with the person in court before you start putting things out there in a complaint. But yes, absolutely, get those complaints there. The more complaints, even you complain no matter what, is going to get rejected. Right? The police department is not in the business of sustaining complaints against their own officers, unless they beat up the news media or someone else, or it's just, I think they almost never sustain complaints. But what it does is it builds up a record. It builds up a record of a particular officer's misconduct in a particular unit, or a particular station or division. And that's good, because eventually something might get exposed, and then there's a record there, and that's a really important thing, is building up a record.
As you express to them, like, about giving this footage to the media?
Sure. The news media can be very effective for amplifying the message. Be smart about how you use them. They'll mess with it any which way, but yeah, you can have a big impact. Posting stuff on YouTube. I've had any number of cases where I found the video that proves my client innocent on YouTube, due to the protest related stuff where the police are coming in and being overly aggressive, being provocative unnecessarily. And everybody's got their cameras going, and a certain percentage of people put stuff up on YouTube. It's always nice if there's some way to find out who posted it, because usually that person is there with friends, and there's more video, or there's more witnesses. But yeah, the internet, though, I believe Al Gore and the military invented it not in our best interests, so is like the roads the Romans built that were used against them to tear the Roman Empire down. So we can use it, right? We have to be careful how we use it, I think, but putting stuff up can be helpful. So the flip side of it is their surveillance on us. I'm trying to circle around to your question about the SARS. It was talking about, there are different types of SARS, right? There's ones where they got your name, they know who you are, and they're writing you down. And then some that's, some guy who looked like this, who we saw him there, and they don't know who you are. But for the ones that are, where they do identify you, often what they're doing is they're making a record. They're making a record that they theoretically could use against you if they're the one who chose to target you. What can you do? I don't know. I mean, other than fight back, organize, publicize it. We discussed legal challenges to it. That's a possibility. Well, not such a big possibility, but it's out there. The more the more there is organizing and resistance and publicity about what's going on, because people don't know, right? People have no idea. You know, one of the things, the whole sort of war on terror stuff is very much modeled like the war on gangs here in California. And one of the things that they've done as part of their war on gangs is they've set up something called Cal gangs, which is not so very different from the fusion center type of thing. And in Cal gangs, it's state-based, so it's more local than this stuff, but they've centralized the gathering of gang data throughout the state. Now how do they define if someone's in a gang? Well, if he's been seen with the police hanging out with known gang members. Okay, well, I mean, you know, who hasn't done that, and certainly who hasn't done that in the neighborhoods that they're targeting, right? And so what they do, the police, if you observe police activity, particularly in neighborhoods that they call gang neighborhoods, Venice has been considered that as long as I've been here, which is a bit of a while. They go around and they stop everybody, right? And they don't necessarily arrest everybody, but they take down your name and, you know, lift up your shirt, let me see if you got any tattoos, where are you from? They ask questions, and they write it all down on what are called FI cards, field interview cards, not unlike the SARS.
What do they do with those?
That's the question, what do they do? But when we try to get them, when we're fighting a case, I had a case, someone mentioned the drone circle, I had a case out of the drone circle, and there was a witness to cop police misconduct, and they admitted that they took an FI card with his name. I wanted his name because he was a good witness for me. Oh, we don't keep those, we don't know what we did with them. Well, what they do with them is they keep them in a file, and they duplicate them, and they send them, the gang FIs in particular, to this central fusion center-like thing. And so it's on record, and the data is input, along with all the other records they might have about the person. And then sometimes down the line, when they want to target that particular person, they'll bring up, the last 5 years worth. Well, we saw him associating with these particular gang members. We've got documentation from this date on this FI card, and documentation on this date on this FI card, and on this date. And they use that to increase the punishment for the crime by calling it a gang crime. I suspect that's ultimately the direction they're going with the SARS, right? One of the directions.
Those FI cards are basically like demerits?
They're just little bits of information that we're keeping, but yes, they're like demerits because they're putting down, he's hanging out with gang members, or he's got this tattoo, and he's admitting to this, or he's wearing blue in a crip neighborhood, or whatever little thing they want to use, but then they come back with and say that indicates gang member. In fact, it's called a street terrorist. All the laws around gang members are called the street terrorist. The STEP Act, Street Terrorist Enforcement something. I don't know what the P is. But the whole system that they set up, and it's been around for a long time. And so now this whole war on terror follows a very similar thing. It's this large-scale data gathering to be used when they need it. When they need to target. And the SARS seems to have that same pattern.
I just want to add something to what John was saying. So remember I was talking to you about the Senate audit of the fusion centers? One of the things that John reminded me of that, what happened was that more than half of the fusion centers didn't even have a counterterrorism behavior, which they were originally planned to do. And they found out that most of them were now gathering information on gangs, on drugs, and of course human trafficking and gun running now. So this whole thing of Cal gangs, so now fusion centers have become this massive repository of information on what started as a gang database, and now all the gang information is going to the fusion centers as well. So I just want to throw that in there, that's where the whole structure is headed.
And one of the other things is just that the technology is different. The technology is accelerating and its uses are becoming more problematic with data gathering. And so that'll take it a step beyond what they've done with Calvin. Yes, sir.
You know, I noticed that the LAPD, when they're dealing with homeless people in this area, if we're like sleeping in front of the Venice Library and they come in, they're not ticketing loan. They're just, you know, hey, give me your ID and we're running, you know, they ask them these questions. But I noticed that they would take out a clipboard as if they were logging things. And like you said, there's SARs and there's these FIs. If you had any idea what they were doing with this clipboard logging,
Yeah.
simple, hey, you were just lying on the ground, not doing anything wrong, we're letting you go. They're running things, but they were, you know, logging things.
Good, great. That's a good segue to kind of the next area, which is sort of rights on the street and homeless rights. Let me come right back to that. Did you have a
I was gonna
question?
say that, that I knew that if you have that kind of record, it could prevent you from getting employment, like a identification card or like security clearance for jobs and stuff.
I don't know that having FI cards or SARs is going to have that effect. I don't know that it's not. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not aware of it doing that. On the other hand, it sure can't help. And a lot of what we're doing, what Hamid and the coalition is doing is like, we have to put the brakes on this stuff before it gets completely out of hand. And you know, the motto, will we sleep or will we fight, right? Because, oh yeah, well, it's not so bad. They're just, you know, we'll sleep through it. And all of a sudden, we've got the Stasi and we have to whisper in our houses, right? So I'm not sure we're there yet. Yeah, no, I'm not sure we're there yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if we're not there yet, if we're getting there.
They are actually, Tom.
Okay.
So private contractors, so one of the key issues that was raised was background check. So you would show up, so false positives is a major concern, that you would falsely show up, and because you're in the suspicious activity database, so if they're doing employment checks, and it's, like I said, fusion centers, private contractors and companies have access to that as well. So if you show up, that can absolutely affect employment, and we know from history from Point Control and all that, that this was going on.
Now I know, okay.
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, you know, we could review this locker storage program, and we were asked to do these live scans. And, you know, I don't like going to police stations at all, and I have to go there to get my fingerprints. And we saw that in the Culver City area, there was a listed live scan department, and I said, all right, well, maybe we'll go there. It's not as heavy as another major police station. It wound up being a locksmith.
Yeah.
So now they've privatized fingerprinting. Right? And so I wonder where this life scan data goes to.
There's a, sorry to interrupt your piece, but the FBI has now developed this next generation intelligence and information gathering program. So now they actually, I mean, we were able to, I love the hackers because when they get hacked, they declassify this information. So now they're up to, as of like 10 months ago, the documents were showing about 78 million, you know, your what they call the writer prompt, and about 82 million of fingerprints, and about 90 million of this and all that. So they're all going to be centralized databases, all of this information.
And anybody can get it.
They're forcing you to live scan and put stuff in the smartphone.
No, to be a volunteer.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
And now, you know,
It's a legal
it's being used like, you know, I mean, certain corporations, it's sort of like security,
Well,
you know.
You know, that's one of the big dangers. All right, so let's go to the question that was raised about what they're doing. So let me make sure I understand the scenario. You're sleeping in front of the library, and the police come up to you and demand your ID and question you, write a bunch of stuff that you can't see what they're writing. We don't.
But it wasn't on a card, it was definitely It wasn't, I could tell, because I had an SAR buildup where they're making a big deal about it. This seemed to be just a clipboard, as in just like one line per person type, much more casual, but still writing.
You know, they're documenting, all right, just as we need to document them, they're documenting, all right, and to what end? Who knows? I mean, we have some idea. But so first question is, do you have to give them your ID?
You know I can go into all that, but also, I've never been arrested in my life, so especially when you're woken up by the LAPD, it's much easier I can go into that whole thing. It's much easier to say, hey, check this driver's license out, you know? That's what I did.
Okay, so your answer is no, but it's gonna get me through this easier if I just let them have my ID.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
So the first part is, do you have to give them your ID? No.
Yeah.
You have to say anything to them? No. Now, if you are in fact violating the law and they're gonna cite you, or you think you're violating the law and they're gonna cite you, you still don't have to give them your ID, but then they might just take you in instead of just giving you a citation, so that's a choice you make. You make the easy way out choice, which is probably the smart choice in your
Some of the
situation.
people around me do have, you know, some of the, I don't know, higher on the punk factor, however you want to put it, but they'll sit there and go through that whole, you know, I'm being arrested or detained thing with one cop, but, you know, do it in the dark on a corner on Lincoln and Rose, and next thing you know, being slammed against a wall, the cops take the wallet out and then run it.
Okay.
You know, certainly happens.
Okay, so there's the punk factor, right? There's a way to assert your rights without being a punk, right?
You know what I mean?
I-
It's totally a
I-
tone
I-
thing.
I-
I'm Mr. Polite.
Exactly.
So,
It
you know.
is a tone thing, but that's one of the things that, you know, I do a lot of trainings on how to assert your rights, and you're absolutely right. It is the tone thing. You can't, I know my rights, you can't touch my wallet, you motherfucker, right? Well, what do you think is gonna happen? That's not gonna go that well. An officer, am I being detained? No. Okay, thanks, see you later. There's different tones. Different people can get away with it more than others, right? I mean, you know, I know the language to speak with them. I have, there's racial factor out of the racial privilege that I can get away with it a lot more than someone else. I also am used to dealing with cops because I deal with them in court day in and day out. And so when I put on the punk factor, you know, hey, am I being detained? Why are you bothering me, cop? I can get away with it. Others have less margin for error with that, let's just say. So it's always a judgment call, but you don't have to give them your ID, and then it's a question of, let's assess the situation. Is it, should I assert my rights to walk away? Hey, come here, I want to talk to you, the cop will say. You know, hey, am I being detained? No, I just want to talk to you, come here. You know, I'm not interested, thanks, goodbye. You have that right. Got to make the assessment whether that's going to be a helpful thing to do, but again, the tone factor.
If they have suspicion that you're doing an unlawful act,
That's
and
different.
they ask you, and interrogate you, and they ask you for your ID, and for some reason you don't have it, and then they start asking for your, you know, your vital statistics, or whatever, you know, it's like your name, your date of birth, and so on, and then they go in their database and they start finding you, and then they have you. Are they allowed to do that?
Okay, so the first thing you said was very crucial. They have suspicion that you've done something unlawful. Okay? So, first off, is that suspicion reasonable? All right.
Like smoking a cigarette?
Okay, well, all right, so if they've caught you violating the law, then yes, that suspicion is gonna be reasonable, and then they're gonna have the right to, well, they can ask you for your ID, and then you can choose whether or not you wanna give it to them, or you might get taken in, right? So then it's better to give them your ID. But smoking a cigarette depends if you're in a place where you're not allowed to smoke a cigarette, right? They can cite you theoretically, they can arrest you if you're breaking the law around smoking a cigarette. But your scenario is they have suspicion that you committed a crime or that you're involved in some illegal activity. The first question is, do they in fact have suspicion? Is that reasonable for them to have a suspicion? You know, I don't like the way he dresses, I don't like the way he looks like a criminal. That's not a reasonable suspicion. But we just got a call that a guy who looks just like you just did a robbery. That is going to be a reasonable suspicion. They're going to have the right to detain you. And detain you means to stop you. They're going to stop you. You are not free to leave. You have to submit to their authority. That's a detention. That's different from, hey, can we talk to you? That's a consensual encounter, and then you can just say, no, you can't talk to me. Right? I'm not saying you necessarily want to do that, but you might.
Just want to ask, like 2 years ago, a cop stopped me for actually no reason.
You know, before we get into your scenario, I want to finish up with the question here, because it's a very important question, and we'll get on back to that. So, if they have the right to detain you because they reasonably suspect that you're involved in a crime, then you're not free to go. You can't just walk away. You don't have to talk to them. Never at any point you have to talk to them. Particularly if you're arrested, don't talk to them. Even if you're innocent as the day is long, don't talk to them. I'm going to say it again, don't talk to them if you're arrested, because you have the right to remain silent. The second line in that is, anything you say can and will be used against you. They're not out there to help you. Don't talk to them. Okay. Now, I'm not saying if you saw a crime and you want to help them solve a crime or help a victim of something, you have to talk to them, sure. But if you're a suspect, if you're being detained, if you've been arrested, don't talk to them. Even if you think you can talk your way out of it, because you probably can't. And even if you think you can, maybe you say one little thing that they use as a piece of evidence against you. Can and will be used against you. That's a right that's really important not to give up, even if you think it's going to go easier for you if you talk.
This before they Miranda you?
They don't do that.
Mirandize you anymore.
They don't.
Yeah, well, not even anymore.
They don't.
They don't have to Miranda. Yeah, that's a big myth. And let me go on this one quick tangent about Miranda, because it's such a huge myth and it drives me a little crazy, and then we'll get right to your question. There's not a legal requirement that they read you your Miranda rights. Right? The only time it matters is if they question you while you're in custody. And custody is a technical term. Doesn't just mean because you're up against the wall. Custody is a little more than that, and it's a little vague what it really means. But if you're in custody and they question you, and the question is trying to get you to say something incriminating, right? Well, did you kill the guy? If they didn't Mirandize you, if they didn't advise you of your right to remain silent before they asked, did you kill the guy? And you say, yeah, I did. Then they can't use that confession you just made against you in court. That's the only thing Miranda, they cannot. That's the only thing that Miranda does for you which is a big thing, right? If they don't Mirandize you, then they can't use your confession. Unless you get them to testify in court, well, I didn't kill him. And they say, oh yes, you said you did. Okay? But the point is, Miranda doesn't, just because they don't read you your rights, doesn't mean that they can't arrest you. It just means that they can't use any statements that you give in response to their questions can be used against you. Okay, go ahead, your question.
2 years ago, I was stopped for no reason, and the cop asked me not just for my phone number, but for my social security number.
Okay.
And I remember being shocked at the time.
Okay.
And that was like 2 years later, and in the exact pretty innocuous event where it's not even worth a ticket in front of the library, the cop, asked a series of questions. Do you have tattoos? I mean, it was just like, I was kind of blown away. Have you ever gone by another name?
Yeah.
But, it was even in that innocent thing, ask for my social security number. I'm in a homeless shelter during the day and I'm surrounded by thugs. Hey, cop ever ask you for your social security number? Many people say no, but I've noticed that more and more, especially in, I guess what you call social control situations, homeless or whatever, suddenly it's, and they're very, very nice or polite when you say, hi, I don't give out that information. There's like zero attitude as if, hey, I wouldn't either. But, you know, I was just wondering if you could comment on, it's like the pattern of suddenly the new number is your social security number.
Yeah, well, you know, they're gathering information. It's the same thing as the SARS. Well, it's not the same thing, it's the same fundamental idea. Gathering information, right? Who knows how they're using this? Who knows what, you know, they've got all kinds of, you know, computer databases that they run information on people. I don't know all of the reach of those things. I mean, probably has a much better idea of the full extent of it. But yeah, what do you need my social security number for? Is that going to help you decide whether or not I just jaywalked? Right? That has nothing to do with, there's no law enforcement, there's no legitimate law enforcement purpose to getting that information, right? But it is part of the information gathering surveillance regime that's on.
Just tied into the illegal immigrant thing?
Well, that might be it. That might be sort of the next step, what they're looking at. Don't know. You know,
Do they carry like recording on a person? Is their radio capable of recording when they're one-on-one?
Not that I'm aware of. A lot of officers that I know of carry their own recording devices, and I think it's smart on their part. They carry them, and that way, you know, someone accuses them of doing something, and they've got the recording, and they didn't do it, right? It protects them. Funny how often those recording devices malfunction when things are happening. But no, as far as I know at this point, and again, there's a lot of different police departments. We're talking LAPD. As far as I know at this point, they don't. I know there's always talk about requiring it, and I think I've heard some talk lately, so maybe they're, you know, starting to require some officers to wear recording devices. I can say I know of some officers who do. It's similar to the patrol car videos. That's been a battle over the years. There are certain departments. When I was public defender, I worked in Englewood for a stretch, and Englewood had patrol car videos. And it was amazing how often, well, we forgot to turn it on. Oh, this one isn't working. You know, boy, when they got someone dead to rights on the video, that sure would show up. You know, again, the technology can be useful, but often it's only as good as the people who are working it. But yeah, you know, we like them to have patrol car videos and some of those devices so that there is surveillance on them. You know, of course, I've also had the case with the patrol car video, and you see them walk the guy past the patrol car video, not in view, and then you hear them beating the crap out of him. So
And even if they have it on video, we saw with Kelly Thomas, it doesn't mean shit.
yeah.
Sometimes.
It does mean shit though, you know, because if there hadn't been a video in that case, then their story would have been the only story, right? They would have lost the names of any witnesses, and anyone who came up and said, I saw this happen, would have just been, you know, attacked and discredited. Because there was a video, there was something, and botched as it was, there was a prosecution, and that's more than there usually is. And I'm not saying by any stretch there was justice, but there was a little push in that direction, and it mobilized people to take action and to see things. It mobilized people who maybe never thought of it that way, to actually see things. So, you know, documenting stuff, even if we don't win the whole thing, everything's a push, and hopefully push in the right direction. construction, but yeah, it's really, it's discouraging. I'm not gonna run off any number of incidents caught on video where the police are just obviously doing something wrong and outrageously wrong and no consequences. So, your scenario, do you want me to talk, I don't want to go on too long, so whoever's running the show, get into the focus as soon as I can. Did you want me to talk about,
I think we got the push to 10. Yeah, so we got half an hour. People,
okay,
we pretty much covered everything we intended to.
okay,
So
yeah.
Brian, yeah, so what's the main things that they've been coming down lately and coming down on us for?
Oh, well, the only question I guess I would ask you is the latest thing when, you know, they're harassing the homeless on the street is the idea of structures. In other words, for example, there is a girl who's a veteran and she's got a tent next to me. And the cops, they're in the tent, it was like, hi, you have to take the poles out of the tent. You can stay in the tent, but you have to take the poles out. All right, I'm making this up, I'm gonna go on. Okay, then, all right, they had to take the poles out. Then, that they couldn't close the door of the tent, that they had to have both their heads outside the tent so they could be identified. Then they made the comment that it would be ideal or something like that, that it would be transparent. So in other words, their whole point was, for their safety is what their point was. We need to know. And the other point was, and this was the LA Times came in and did a photo expose, and it was in the Times about 5 days ago, was another guy down the street from me taking, let's say, a shopping cart and putting a tarp over it, and that was, hey, you know, you're being temporarily detained, that's a structure. And that was the cue word of, and now it was very arbitrary, and the two people in the tent, after they did that for a day or two, just went back to putting it up and just went right back. Their whole thing was, we're right in the corner of Gold's Gym, and there's the sidewalk, which is, you know, we're waiting till 9 p.m. the 6 a.m. thing. But interestingly enough is, in the little corner they're at, hey, that's Gold's Gym private property. In other words, they're handing out $160 camping on the sidewalk tickets like candy. And I mentioned this to the veteran, this blonde girl, and she said, oh, it's technicality. Oh, no, technicality. Judges love technicalities. Is, hey, you were given a ticket for camping on the sidewalk. No, you were trespassing on private property. And go tell the judge, hey, I was given the wrong ticket. Technically, sorry, I was trespassing. See you tomorrow night. I'm there every night, you know. So that's the answer to your question. Where those were I mean, it goes on and on and on, but those are the two little keywords: structures. That point.
Now, there's another thing that's going on where one specific individual, nameless, has got a multitude. She's got like 30. The person has 30 sleeping tickets. 30
Okay.
sleeping tickets.
Tickets for sleeping. Now, is she getting up and getting out at 6 a.m.?
No, she's on the beach.
Okay. Oh.
They don't leave the beach.
Oh, okay. So this is are they giving it to her for violating curfew on the beach or what?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking for the right case to try to challenge that.
But given that the Coastal Commission mandate is.
Yeah, or whatever legal theory that may be one.
How helpful is this petition to have signed? How many signatures do you need to?
The petition is saying.
It's going to the Coastal Commission.
Now, you know, look, any kind of advocacy and organizing is going to be very helpful. You know, when they set up the, you know, the OPDs and like 300 Venetians showed up at the Coastal Commission, and one after another, you know, 10-1 against it, spoke out. That moved them, right? I mean, so yeah, petition, speak out, you know, take action, march and protest. It has an impact. The legal side, you know, that's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the biggest piece by far. Now, occasionally it can be a powerful one. For
Public
example,
outcry.
yeah, no, it's, you know, it's public pressure, right? One example that I wanted to quickly touch on about the legal pieces. Are they enforcing Municipal Code 5611? No property, you can't leave property on the ground.
Yeah,
Are they taking people's property?
yeah.
Yeah, they're doing that a lot. A
Okay.
lot.
They've begun, I don't know if they, now Deborah, you know best, did they, through the back tag, have they started citing people?
Yeah, they did the sweep, the second sweep on Friday, and then, but also they did,
Were they citing people?
they
Were
were
they
just,
getting tickets?
they were just taking their stuff.
Okay, so
So impounding has been happening.
yeah, I mean, and there is a federal court injunction forbidding them. Injunction is an order from the court saying you can't do this, forbidding them from taking and destroying
Right.
people's property. Now, what that means exactly is a little bit loose, but basically, I think the way it should be working on the ground is that if you're there with your stuff, that they can't just take it from you, and if they do take it, they can't just simply destroy it, which is what they were doing. They have to, they have to store it and give you an opportunity to get your stuff back. Now, the question of whether the law itself that says you can't have your property on the ground, whether that's a constitutional law, whether it's legal for them to enforce that law, that's another question that's not been resolved yet. You know, if you know people who are getting cited for that, let me know, I'll look at that. That's a case that I would look at.
I hear at least 5, 6 complaints a day
Okay.
that
Of
their
getting
property
cited,
is being taken and
property being
destroyed.
taken and
Yes,
destroyed.
and not
Okay.
given back.
Well, Deborah, are you collecting complaints on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so get those complaints to Deborah, because the lawyer who's really handling the property destruction and stuff is Carol Sobel. And, you know, I think she's looking to document violations, because then she can get the federal court to enforce that. So that's a piece where there is the strong legal weapon, right, in the courts that we have that depends on, you know, people power, right? Organizing, you helping your friends get complaints to Deborah so she can get it to the lawyer to get enforcement. People documenting what's happening, right? As it's happening, get your cell phone out and videotape it from a safe distance so that when we go into court and they say, oh no, we didn't do that, we say, let's turn on the projector here and let's watch what you did. That's how they got the injunction in the first place. The city, people from the city came in saying, oh no, we don't do that, we don't do that. And the community watch down on the Skid Row, they said, oh, sure you do. And they had all kinds of video showing really outrageous examples. So, you know, it's a collective effort to fight back on this stuff.
But the more that they know that we're all watching them, and we will pull over, and we will, you know, just stand there as a witness, the less they'll, go down.
John, I have a question in regards to, being a volunteer in the Lock and Storage program. I don't know if you knew this, but there has been vandalism and malicious actions done to deter from displaced individuals putting their belongings in the storage locker. Specifically, freaking insane covert jumping over a fence and putting expensive locks on the container, where we've had to come out with bolt cutters to cut them off. And then just very childish, like, you know, destroying of a combination lock on the front face of the actual locker storage fencing, and the ripping down of an actual Venice Housing Authority sign, right? Now, these things, obviously the gentleman that's doing it, the person that's doing it is chuckling as like, oh, we're deterring this. But this is an actual, thing that's deterring individuals from, one, getting their property secured, two, getting to a store, getting to the shelter program, and at the appropriate time it's giving them allotted to go on this bus to do this. Now, this affects me because I'm displaced. And as a volunteer, this isn't a joke. And so what legal recourse do we have to catch this individual? I don't know.
But why are the police investigating?
Exactly.
Why are they
Fingerprints.
putting the full resources that they have to it? Don't know, they got bigger priorities, right?
It's ironic because the Parks and Recreation supervisor has suspicion who it is as well, and
I mean,
it's
they
the
actually
individual
know-
that
they
we
have a pretty
think
good
it
idea
is.
who it is.
So it's being swept under the rug, like my cronies, oh, we know, or we have an idea. Well,
Steve
that's
doesn't
cool.
want to press charges on that though, because he doesn't want the community to think that when there's a storage thing, there's going to be vandalism and a big controversy there. So I think part of the reason they're not doing anything is because he's trying to keep it on the DL for political reasons.
Yeah, I agree that not agree, my suggestion was that we put a sign saying that, this area is being surveilled.
Yeah, why don't you put down there?
Or just signs that say you're under
Yeah,
surveillance.
you're under
Or you can buy those fake cameras.
Yeah, I have a question,
No, what do you think?
We should
One second,
discuss.
John.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all.
Well, that there is, and you use the word childish, there's this sort of reactionaries in Venice, who are very childish, like they're weird, right? I mean, and they've been running amok for a while, but they kind of serve the interest of the money people who are coming in. I mean, they aren't even necessarily themselves the money people who are.
Well, the irony of this one is that it slapped this individual in the face because now the storage locker program is done there for another 6 months more.
Yeah.
So you probably like.
So I mean, short of catching the guy in the act, it's just, it's a shame, and they got all the money, they got access to the politicians, the police are working for them, and they gotta do this sort of stuff, right? It's kind of sorry.
But is it a good idea to actually put a sign that says this area is under surveillance?
You can pull it off, surveil it yourself.
I think the whole city's under surveillance.
No, but I'm just saying, a sign, just so you can make this individual kind of like,
That individual knows that it's not being
If that part of the beach, you just can't remove their gun, you can just look around and see.
Okay,
All right, we have a question.
as a servant, volunteer servant of the people, they come to me with a whole lot of lists, just like people stealing, there's gangs with knives, there's meth people, there's just, I hear like at least 30 stories a day, from St. Joe's to Venice Beach, and they're all my friends. They're all my friends, and some of them have issues with public intoxication and disorderly conduct. They may have mental issues, they may be classified, and they come to me and I was arrested. And they come out, they don't have any shoes. They have none of their belongings, they're crying over their journals and their artwork, their artists. And they're asking me to help them, and I don't know if they have any answers to how to help them. Are they entitled to receive the belongings in which they were arrested with? And how do you go about retrieving their belongings after they've been released and sobered up?
Okay, yes, they're entitled to get their stuff back. Will they get their stuff back? I don't know. Depends on what the police did with it. Ordinarily, there's a process. Sometimes you have to go back to the county jail. Because often what's happens is people get released from the courthouse, sometimes in the white jumpsuit that they didn't have to return and then they get their stuff back. It depends on the situation.
And no shoes? I mean,
Yeah,
what's with the no
it
shoes?
depends on the situation. Well, often they'll take the shoes and you get your county jail slippers. It depends on the particular situation. I can't give a general answer to that because I don't think there is a general answer other than if your stuff was booked into property at the county jail, there should be a way for you to get your stuff out of the county jail. If it was booked at the station, there should be a way to get it at the station. Depends on the individual thing. Last question for me, because it's past my bedtime.
So, John, you mentioned that you are looking for a case to challenge the boardwalk closure, or an incident. What should that incident? What would that incident look like?
1,000 people have to sit down on the boardwalk and say, "Fuck you."
We can do that.
Let's go, let's go.
Ideally, someone who doesn't have a criminal record or isn't on probation, who can fight the case so that we can take it to a test. I haven't looked in much detail at the law on that, but I'm willing, if I'm presented with a case, to look at it and see if there is a way to challenge it. I don't know if there is.
Now, if you're a Native American and want to do some sort of religious ceremony, or, that's before 6 a.m. in the dawn.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's with the no fire?
Let me
That's the AQMD, which is a whole different thing.
I know. Would you like to sign?
I think we're excited. Yeah, for you, son.
No, but I'm serious.
Thank God.
John, if an individual who's a Native American wants to
I don't know.
have his right to practice his own religion at this specific hour of the day or evening, and it's when the park is closed.
Do you know that the only legal thing that anyone's majored that won on Venice Beach is Harry Perry, see the guy with the skates and everything? But if you read Perry versus the city of LA, the opening preamble, his entire point of he had the right to make his living there was his religion.
Yeah, secret, yeah. All right. What do you think about the religious?
Depends on the case.
Thank you
I don't
so
really have
very
an
much.
answer.
Thank you very much.
All right.
It has to be.
Hey, now guys, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream. Good night.
I'm not minimizing your theory, I just don't know the answer.
There's a South American